Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Let's start off with the debt ceiling vote about to happen. My congressman, Scott, Perry, he said he is a firm no. He's a firm no. Not going to vote for it. Not it's bad. In fact, he even went as far as to call, some of his Republican colleagues swampy. Oh, that hurt. Swampy Republicans are behind the wheel of this deal, and he's not going to have it. In fact, he went as far to say that all of the reality that people have been talking about not paying your bills, evidently in his world, if you don't pay the bills, now this is a very Trumpian thing to say. I got to give him credit. He's going full on Trump here. If you don't pay your bills, nothing bad's going to happen. According to him, the United States won't default. Not going to default on its debt, even if this fails. Not going to happen. Janet Yellen evidently is just a liar. She's making it all up. Here's the thing. Here's my problem, and this is the reality of the moment that we're in. There are a lot of Scott Perrys out there. There are a lot of Scott Perrys in Congress who reality doesn't touch between their ears. They have this alternative reality that it just isn't there. And look, the reason I said very Trumpian is Trump's a guy who's filed bankruptcy multiple times. He's never lost his house. Now, bad things have happened to everybody else around him, but that's not his problem. That's somebody else. And I got to think that's the Scott Perry thought process here. And look, the lunatic fringe, they're not going to vote for this legislation. They really wanted to shoot the hostage. I mean, I said from the beginning, I thought Scott Perry was one of the crazy caucus who truly did want to default, truly did want to shoot the hostage in this environment. And they're not happy. If there is a positive takeaway from this, it's that the crazy caucus isn't firmly in the driver's seat. The radical fringe didn't get everything that they wanted out of the 15 rounds of voting that it took McCarthy to become speaker and to sell his soul. It appears that all of that was for naught. All of that display, that performative bread and circus, all of that was for nothing because they didn't get what they wanted. This is what they wanted. This was their Super Bowl. This was supposed to be it. And look, honestly, I thought the Republican Party was a little bit further down the road on the fringe. I did. There are some that do care about governing and do have some sane fiscal ideas. Now, am I thrilled with this deal? No, not even a little bit. I don't think there should have been any deal here. There should be no debt ceiling. It's ridiculous. We've normalized Republicans taking the country hostage every time this pops up. Every time there's a Democrat in the White House and Republicans hold the House. I guess the lesson is here, don't allow Republicans to hold the House. For me, this is it going into 2024. That's the rallying cry. And all of the Scott Perrys of the world, those are targeted seats to go, look, you got a guy who's not attached to reality. Maybe somebody else. Now, here's the weird thing. You could get people worse. But in someone like Scott Perry's district, which is a little bit more competitive than it's been over his tenure, it's possible to get somebody sane and rational. I'm not saying likely, I'm saying possible. Now, here's the thing. McCarthy still has a problem because... And it's a real problem because his job is to get stuff done. His job is to move an agenda through past legislation because that's what a speaker does. His job, pass bills. Nancy Pelosi was very good at this. But here's the thing. When you pass bills in this kind of really tight environment, passing bills just makes him look weaker and much more vulnerable. And because there's already, there's all the chatter out there. Oh, we're gonna go after him. We're gonna get rid of him. We're gonna call for a motion to vacate. And we're gonna do all this stuff. They're not doing that. Trust me, they're not going to go after McCarthy because they've just shown how weak they are. They don't have the votes, and Democrats have shown that they're willing to govern. So that really puts the crazy caucus in a weird spot. Now, they can kick and scream and be childish and whine and do the things that Scott, Perry does, along with Gates and Marjorie Trainwreck Green and the rest of them. But they're not moving their agenda, which is chaos. They did it to McCarthy, but I don't know that it's going to work here because, what are the options for them? Okay, let's say that they take McCarthy out. Who replaces them? Nobody. Who's the alternative? Nobody. Nobody wants the job, especially when you're so tenuously tied to it that any one idiot can call a motion. Which, I got to be honest, if someone like Brian Fitzpatrick were to step up and say, I'll be dumb enough to take the gavel, I'm sure there would be a Republican every day shutting things down. So, gonna be interesting in seeing how this plays out. But I did find it interesting that today you had McCarthy coming out and saying that he's putting together a commission. This is an interesting thing for me. He got pretty badly whipped. The old guy took him to school. Be honest, Biden won this because Republicans didn't get really that much. They got a little bit, but not that much. Not as much as they probably should have, with really the threat of throwing the country into chaos, which I think is why I think they lost this, because Biden was shrewd about it. The old doddering old fool who's Sleepy Joe took him to school, which I think is hysterical. Because you listen to the right, he's a doddering old fool, but the doddering old fool just whipped your behind, and that's got to sting. It's got to sting a little bit, which is why McCarthy today came out and said that he's got this commission, and they're going to look at, I don't know what look at means, but they're looking at going after Social Security and Medicare. He says, I'm going to make some people uncomfortable. And he went after Biden. And again, listen, old folk, people my age, going to be getting towards Social Security and retirement. Listen to what I'm telling you right now. These are the words out of McCarthy's mouth. He went after Biden for walling off cuts to Social Security and Medicare. It was a non-starter in Biden's world. It was a non-starter with Sleepy Joe, Dark Brandon, whatever your name for him is. It was a non-starter. Republicans wanted it. And, you remember the State of the Union address where they act incredible? Oh my gosh, what? Us? Me? Cut Social Security? Never. We would never do such a thing except for every day that we've said we're going to. This is an interesting moment because you've now got McCarthy trying to salvage some of his reputation with the Kook caucus, going, no, relax. We'll go get him. We'll go get the stuff you want. You pass that look, listen, steal, grow, make the country bankrupt bill or whatever that was. You passed it. We got it passed. I didn't use it. Wanted no part of it. You got none of it. But hey, now we're going to go get him. No, this time we're going to go do it. And I got to wonder if the crazy caucus is going to fall for it. Because this is one of those moments where McCarthy's like I said, he's in a weird spot because he's got to get stuff done. Got to get stuff moved through. That's the legacy maker. And if you're not, well, going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, I fully expect the legislation to pass. I expect it to go through the Senate. I expect the president to sign it. There are people on both the right and the left signaling that they are going to vote against it. Bernie Sanders came out and said he's going to vote against it. And I agree with Bernie 100% that in this moment, cutting food programs and cutting help for seniors and for homeless people, probably the wrong thing to do. It seems mean-spirited, seems evil. but this is what the Republicans wanted. And it wasn't as drastic, it wasn't as much, but it's still there. So Bernie did come out and say, look, we're not falling for this. I'm not voting for it. Now, is his vote going to matter? No, I think you're going to get enough. I think you're going to get enough people who are going to vote through it to get it passed out of the Senate. I think that'll happen because, the Senate, the upper chamber, the more thoughtful, supposedly, they don't want to be responsible for the economy taking a nosedive. They don't want to be responsible for what will come after June 5th if we do hit that date and don't pay our bills. So I do expect it will pass, just without Bernie's vote. But Bernie is right. These budget things are about our priorities as a country. And what Republicans repeatedly show us, and this is one of those moments where when do we believe them? They are repeatedly showing us that they don't care about working people. They certainly don't care about the poor. I mean, they wear their religiosity on their sleeve. The thing that tells them to go and help the poor, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the homeless. Those are nice words on a page, but it doesn't come out in their actions. The budget is their action. That look, listen, feel up, whatever, steal, grow, I don't know, whatever that was that came out of the House, that, if that's your religiosity at work, I got a question if you understand what the book says. I got to check your reading comprehension. Maybe that homeschooling not doing you any justice. But the rest of us, these are learning moments. These are opportunities to pay attention and go, what they say and what they do don't always mesh. But sometimes they do. They have repeatedly said they want to go after all of the social safety net programs. They want to go after Social Security. They want to go after Medicare. They want to go after Medicaid. They want to go after aid for the poor. They want to go after low-income housing. Glenn Grothman, the Wisconsin representative, the scourge. How dare they not kick those low-income people to the curb, make them get married. This is one of those moments where the sane and the rational, the majority of this country, the silent, sane, rational, have to vote like their lives matter. Look, the Trump supporters of the world, they don't care. They don't even care about the issues. They care about their leader. They care about the outrage. It's time for working people to come together and be that change, be part of something that's going to move us in a positive direction. That silent majority that gets up every day, goes to work, busts their behind, and still struggling to make ends meet, but still gets up and does it day after day after day, only to be mistreated by our political system at every single turn. At some point, we got to get tired of this and start throwing some of these bums out. And that's where my mind is. All the outrage candy aside, it comes down to what they do. And this hostage situation, this latest hostage taking, should be a wake-up call for us all. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You will find ours. Quick break. Right back.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I'll tell you, I find it interesting that all of the Republican frontrunners, they're all on board with default. All of them seem to want to default and take us down. And it's just one of these things where you go, what priorities do you have? Is it your narrow-minded agenda? We've got to cut and hurt poor people. When my congressman, Scott, pardon me, Perry, when he came out against it, my first thought was it must be a good deal, because he was one of the first people that I looked to. Where is he going to be on this? So when he was like, I'm against it, I said, it must not hurt working people enough, because that's where they keep putting us. Let's quick go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, how are you?
Totally insane. How's that?
Back to normal. What's on your mind?
What I wanted to say was, West Virginia is a perfect example of a state that has been taken over by the Republicans. They're pretty much, their legislature is pretty much red. And that state
not just
is so
pretty much,
up.
Alice. They've got veto-proof majorities and a Republican governor.
Yeah, well, I was trying to be tactful.
Okay.
You really don't want to know what I wanted to say. But anyways, it is so messed up. I still do not have death certificates for my husband. I have called about the autopsy, and I have been told that, well, it's going to be a few more days. I'm like, my God, it's been 6 weeks. But it is totally insane. Like the hospital he was in, it is a part of the university, and like I told you before, you have to pretty much you have to show your ID, get your picture taken, the whole 9 yards. But West Virginia passed a law, and it also applies there. You can carry a gun into the hospital now.
Yeah.
But I guess, as my son said, well, gee, Mom, this way, when you get pissed off and shoot the doctor, you've got your little name tag on with your picture, and they know who did it. So everybody better set up and pay attention, because this is how crazy they are, and this is what they want to do to the rest of the United States. And it's just insane. I mean, I'm still working on getting my husband's Social Security, because I was getting Social Security before, but for some odd reason, I had to fill out another form and go through everything. So, yeah, they're just screwing everybody over. Y'all have a good evening.
Thanks, Alice. And imagine how much worse it would have been had this continued and they actually did default, and, man, the craziness that comes out of this. And, look, these are the people who tell us, do you remember them flying the blue flags? We support law enforcement. Not so much now. I mean, you've got the Heritage Foundation, who tweeted out, the FBI is no longer a law enforcement agency. It's become a political weapon for the left. It's time to scrap the FBI and start over from scratch. You got, Marjorie Three Names, who, again, remember, they're all in favor, had the blue flags, love surrounded herself with people in uniforms. She's out there hawking defund the FBI T-shirts and hats. I mean, the outrage level ramping. And amusingly so on a certain level, but dangerously so, because it's not even about fixing problems that are real. It's about imagined slights in a lot of places. And this is where I find we're in a weird spot, because they want to ramp up the violence, they want to ramp up the rhetoric, get people all lathered up in the panties and ready to go at each other. And when real crimes pop up, they want to divert For instance, today, the big breaking news all across when does breaking news stop being breaking news? When does it become broken news? I should go like that. It's broken news. Evidently, there's now a tape of Donald Trump basically talking about classified documents that he kept after leaving the White House and that he knew he shouldn't have. Talked about, evidently this 4-page report that was written up that would have attacked Iran, and there have been deployments of massive numbers of troops. It was basically John Bolton's wet dream, but he was talking about it with someone who was writing a book about Mark Meadows, and you go, oh, how? Why? And look, he doesn't even try and say, no, that's not me on the tape. No, I don't have any documents. He's not even saying that he has the right anymore. Now it's attacking, well, there's these leaks. We got to go after the leakers. No, we got to go after the person who's responsible for all of this. And that's the guy on the tape. And part of me got in this space today where my mind is in a spot where this leak happened, I think, as a primer to what is going to come. I've said that I think he will be indicted on the documents. I've said this before, and I've had guests who say, no, it's never going to happen. I've said I think this is the one is dangerous for him because it is national security stuff. It is provable. He did try and get around it. But now that there's a tape with his voice on it, there's part of me that goes, this is being floated out there to kind of maybe head off the call to arms when he is arrested. Because look, the Trump minions, it's not about getting things done. It's not about, the stuff we talk about sometimes about, the jobs that were lost anymore. It's not about that. It's about anger. It's just about grievance. It's just about, we're angry, we're upset, and we're going to make everybody miserable. That's really what the Trump cult is about, because they're never angry with him for not doing any of the things that he said he was going to do. I mean, they're constantly getting fleeced. Every time you turn around, there's a new scheme to get into MAGA world's pockets and line somebody else's pockets by grifting them, Trump included. They never go after them. It's always the attention getting. It's always the grievance stuff. So I think that this leak was partially, and probably, and I may be wrong, a primer to say, look, this is real. Get ready because indictments are coming. Trump's lawyers have even told him, get ready, there are indictments coming. It will happen. This is one of those things that just makes you go, it's moving me in a direction where I think it's happening, it's going to happen, but this is a primer for getting us to the point where we say, maybe this is the right direction. Maybe we do need to pursue this. Maybe we do need to hold someone accountable. Maybe we do need transparency. Maybe we need to claw back our ability to hold people responsible for what they do. Remember, the Republican Party used to be the party of responsibility. I remember it anyway. Question is will Trump run while being tried? And what happens if he wins? Does he get to pardon himself? We'll ask that question and many more in the next segment. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1921. That was the day one of the worst race riots in American history began in Tulsa, Oklahoma. In a frenzy of anti-black violence, a white mob destroyed virtually the entire black neighborhood of Greenwood. Over the course of the next 2 days, as many as 300 mostly black residents were killed. Black Wall Street had been burned to the ground, leaving 10,000 homeless. The day before, Dick Rowland, a young black man, tripped as he boarded an elevator at his job. He fell against the young white woman elevator operator. When she shrieked, nearby department store employees assumed she had been assaulted. Rowland was arrested, and newspapers fanned the flames of race violence and vigilantism. And on this day, white racist mobs surrounded the Tulsa County Courthouse where Rowland was being held and demanded he be turned over to them. Returning black veterans had become increasingly assertive about their rights as citizens. They marched to the courthouse armed in an attempt to prevent Rowland's lynching. When the vets refused to disarm in the face of the demands by the white mob, gunfire ensued, touching off 16 hours of fighting that literally decimated the community black workers and professionals had built up over the course of decades. The National Guard was called out, mainly to disarm and round up black residents of Greenwood. Witnesses reported that Greenwood was bombed from the air by police and by Sinclair Oil Company planes. The history of the riot was buried for more than half a century. It would take until 1997 for the Oklahoma State Legislature to set up a commission to uncover the bloody details, which produced a 200-plus page report and recommended millions in reparations. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Do mass protests matter anymore? Even when large numbers turn out with a high level of outrage directed at abusive corporate or governmental elites, the powers that be usually just hunker down and wait for the fury to pass. But the one form of protest that actually gets to even the most aloof elite is cultural caricature. In recent decades, the creative deployment of giant puppets, satirical songs, pop-up parodies, and other forms of social mockery has pierced the ego shields of haughty corporate chieftains and puffed-up politicos. They ignore angry speeches, but public ridicule stings them personally, energizing the larger community. Consider how common household utensils can rally the people's discontent, rattle the establishment, and deliver a message of revolutionary protest. In recent years, mass rebellions, armed with nothing but kitchenware, have noisily made their points in such disparate places as Chile and Iceland. And today, the people of France are bedeviling their country's aristocratic wannabe, President Emmanuel Macron, with a ceaseless mass clanging of skillets, saucepans, spoons, and other plebeian cookware brought from their French kitchens into the streets of every region. They are protesting the president's imperious decision to undercut their pensions, as well as his tone-deaf refusal even to hear their complaints. So their voice has become the incessant banging of pots. Now, Macron can't go anywhere without being greeted and often drowned out by the cacophony of casserolade, the saucepan movement. The protest is driving Macron crazy, which seems to be a very short ride for him. Clearly irritated by the commoner's cleverness, his government is now using anti-terrorism laws to ban, quote, the use of portable sound devices in protests. This is Jim Hightower saying the crazier he gets about pots and pans, the louder people laugh at their leader.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it looks like the House has approved the debt ceiling deal. It's going to allow the U.S. to borrow more money to keep the economy going and not default, not crash the global economy. The vote by a 314 to 117 margin. You had 165 Democrats joining 149 Republicans to move forward on the 99-page bill. Bipartisan. So you look, this is where I was saying McCarthy's in a weird spot. Still got the crazy people, still got them, but they're not as powerful as well. The 15 rounds of getting to be speaker would have let us believe. And here to share some thoughts on the vote and what this means for McCarthy and company, I've asked our good friend Chris Hahn to come talk with us. He is the aggressive progressive host of that podcast, also a syndicated radio host across the country. Chris, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me, man.
So, thoughts?
I mean, 71 Republicans voted no. I think his deal to become speaker meant that any one of them can go do a motion to vacate. I don't think they have enough votes for anybody else to be speaker. So if they make a motion to vacate, do moderate Republicans, those that are left, like from the governing wing of the party, former coalition with Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats. I mean, Hakeem Jeffries said you need 150 votes for this to pass from the GOP. They got 149. I assume that they actually got 150 because the speaker tends to not vote in the House. So they did get exactly 150. I don't know. 71's a lot. I didn't think he was going to lose 71 people, but maybe they just thought, well, some of them thought, well, it's going to pass. They don't need my vote. I don't want to be primaried. Like what's her name? Nace down
South
in
Carolina.
South Carolina, who I always thought was one of the more normal members of the caucus. She announced very early she wasn't voting for this. But maybe she saw the writing on the wall and said, I don't want to get primaried because she is one of the more normal ones and she's susceptible to be primaried.
Yeah, and that's something that people have to understand, that there are some votes that people go whichever way that's going to get you reelected.
Yeah, take a walk if you need it.
Yeah. And because, look, this wasn't close.
No, it wasn't close.
Just like a minute ago, I talked about Senator Sanders said he's voting against it. This isn't in peril in the Senate either, I don't think.
No, it's not in peril in the Senate. It's going to pass the Senate with a similar margin, percentage margin. It's going to easily pass the Senate. There are fewer crazies in the Senate. Tim Scott says he's going to vote against it because he's running for president. I don't think if he wasn't running for president, I mean, let's say he's still in the race tomorrow, assuming he's still going to be in the race tomorrow. He says he's going to vote no.
I think he's in the race, and I think a lot of more people are going to be jumping into the race.
Yeah, but like Tim Scott's another one that you look at, you go, okay, he's a conservative, but he's not a maniac, and he's out there right now saying, "I'm voting no on this." I disagree with him on a lot of things, but I never thought he was crazy. I hate this. I hate the politics here.
Yeah.
I mean, the politics is that to be a conservative in America today, you have to burn the house down, or at least pretend to burn the house down. In the case of Scott and Mace, I don't think either one of them really want to burn the house down, but they're trying to get. Scott's got no lane in the GOP primary, but if he voted yes, there's even less of a lane. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at all of the Republican contenders for president, and they're all, blow up the economy, default. We're against it, and
well, Chris Christie, who's going to get in the race tomorrow,
he's not in.
Getting in tomorrow. That's an interesting one for me. Chris Christie is a real puncher, right? Ron DeSantis is trying to become a puncher. He's never been a puncher. I saw him say elites 70 times over the weekend. I think a guy who went to Harvard and Yale might be an elite. I'm just
spitballing.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about it. I mean, Harvard and Yale. I mean, not just one, both. I don't know who the elites are. I went to SUNY Albany and St. John's. Am I elite? Is he calling me an elite? It drives me nuts. He's an idiot. He has no chance. And when he punches, it looks forced. When Chris Christie punches, it looks like it's supposed to look. And he's very good at it. I mean, he single-handedly ended Marco Rubio's presidential ambitions ever. I mean, it was him.
Yeah.
He had no chance of winning that primary, but when Chris Christie took him apart in that debate, Marco Rubio was gone. So the question I have for these Republican wannabes is, are they all going to follow what I think is going to be Chris Christie's lead and start attacking Trump mercilessly so that Trump's numbers come down? Because before you could try to rise to the top, you need to take this guy out. And while he's still hovering around 60% in the GOP primary, there is no lane for anybody to become president or be the nominee of the Republican Party. So I think that what happened in 2016 was they all took turns being his buddy, and then they all lost. So I think what they should all do now is all gang up on. They should have a meeting without him, and they should go to a Baskin Robbins or something, get a scoop of whatever Republicans eat. I would imagine it's pistachio, and just go and say, okay, we're gonna get this guy. We're all gonna take shots at him every day. We're gonna take merciless shots at him for the next month. We're not gonna talk about any of us. We're gonna just talk about him and how bad he is for America all the time. And if they did that, maybe they get him down to around 30%, and then maybe one of them can win. So
let me ask you this, though, because we see the breaking news, and it's been breaking all day long. So about now, it's about broken. There's a tape now, evidently Trump admitting that there's some classified documents that he had. There's something here. I've taken this as potentially they've thrown this out as just kind of a primer that indictments are going to come. Kind of to quash down any potential violence or anything along those lines.
One of the reasons I like coming on your show is that you and I are both liberals, but we're Gen X liberals. So we're a little bit more realistic than some of our millennial and Gen Z brethren. Let me explain to them right now. Doesn't freaking matter. Okay. This is like the 90th time we've got him. We've got him. Oh, we've got him. No, we don't. Because his base does not care. Right? So he will still be there. They all think it's a conspiracy. They don't believe me and you. They only believe him. So, yeah, maybe these prosecutors have a case against him and maybe they, slap a fine on him at some point. I don't know. CNN's been plugging this tape all day, but they haven't played it.
Nobody's got it.
Nobody's got it. I'm sorry. I don't think it matters one bit politically. It might matter in the legal cases. Maybe it causes them to bring an indictment against him. But again, I've said this to you before. He's never going to jail. And anything short of him going to jail means he's still in the presidential race. And quite frankly, he's got to be taken out both by us or by his own people. I mean, they need to form a coalition among all the Republican wannabes for president to go after this guy. Because look, there's nobody more dangerous than Donald Trump.
I agree.
And I do think there's nobody that is easier to beat than Donald Trump, but he doesn't have a zero chance of becoming president. In fact, I put it like 35%, which is pretty damn good. That's, that's a 2 in 5 chance of becoming president of the United States, and 2 in 5 chances come in a lot. So it's not something that I want to play a game with. I would rather go up against Chris Christie, who I don't agree with on most things, but at least he's a rational human being who's not going to burn this country to the ground.
Would you rather have Christie up against Biden? Because there's part of me that goes, the only way I think we move forward as a country is by taking Trump out at the ballot box.
Yes.
By having that.
But I think if the Republican Party can take him out at the ballot box, I think that's good. I think that's better than us waiting for the results on election night in November. And having, riots in the streets from skinheads who think that this guy wins no matter what. It's time for this guy to take a beating, and somebody's got to bring the fight to him. I mean, one of the reasons why, look, I worked for Chuck Schumer. You know this, right?
Yeah.
And Alphonse D'Amato was senator here in New York, a state that should not have had a Republican senator or Republican governor. It was overwhelmingly Democratic, even in the 80s and 90s when D'Amato was flourishing in politics. And what happened was every 6 years, D'Amato would face a very gentlemanly opponent who wouldn't mix it up with D'Amato until Chuck Schumer came along and punched him in the face. And that was it.
Figuratively, of course.
Figuratively, of course, right. I don't subscribe to violence in politics. I'm using metaphors. Until one of these Republicans are willing to go sharp at this guy every day, relentlessly, and bring it all up. Yep. The five kids from the 3 wives, the crime, the scams, the charity stuff. Bring it all up like it's not coming from me. Coming from Chris Christie, coming from Ron DeSantis, coming from, Tim Scott or Nikki Haley or Mike Pence. Mike Pence needs to come out in his announcement next week and say, that man tried to kill me. And not only did he try to kill me, he tried to tear apart the United States Constitution. And he has no business being on the ballot for my party. And if he doesn't say that, forget him. He's worthless to American politics.
Will Mother let him do that, though? I mean,
I don't think so. I think he needs to, I think he needs to stay calm. That's the way they like to do things in whatever weird religion he's part of. So I don't think
that's the answer right there. The guy tried to murder me.
Get out there. Mike Pence did the right thing. I'm sorry. Mike Pence did the right thing. Like hat tip to Kevin McCarthy today. Did the right thing.
Yeah.
Right. He doesn't always do the right thing. Mostly does the wrong thing, but he did the right thing today.
Blind squirrel found the nut.
Right. Mike Pence did the right thing on January 6th. He stood firm. Not only did he the right thing, he did a very courageous thing by staying in the Capitol. I respect him for that. He needs to take advantage of that. And he needs to say, that guy tried to kill me and the United States Constitution, and I didn't let him. And if he says things like that, maybe he'll have a chance to win some delegates to the Republican National Convention. I don't think so.
No chance.
Because I don't think so either. But you know what? What does he have to lose by saying that? How delusional of a human being is he? Look, I tend to subscribe to Malcolm X a little bit. And when people try to kill you, any means necessary. Get out there and fight back, Mike. What's wrong with you?
No, it's the same thing I say about Democrats. I've always.
And by the way, tell your social media people not to quote me on that one because it's too easily cancelable, and I don't want to be misquoted.
Yeah, heaven forbid we're canceled.
Get the stenographer out there. That's what I really said.
No, but here's the thing, and I've always said this about Democrats. In a street fight, the best you're going to get out of a Democrat is an offer to hold your coat.
Right.
I want people who are going to ball up their digits and get in there and mix it up.
The only way to do it.
And this is what we need. We need people who are going to fight for working class values, fight to move things forward. But here's the thing, and this is where
it's why I have the nickname the aggressive progressive.
I got it. That's why I love you.
I love you, brother. It's like people think it means I'm the biggest progressive. No, I want to win.
Yep.
I want to win.
No, and this is where I think where Trump has this advantage of he doesn't have to produce anything. He's got this godlike.
Yeah.
His base has put him up on this pedestal. They never hold him accountable for the things he never does. There's no wall. He didn't make their lives better. He didn't bring manufacturing back. No, he didn't do any of that stuff.
In fact, his buddies scammed him into paying for a wall, and then he gave them pardons when they got convicted for it by his own Justice Department. It wasn't my Justice Department. It wasn't the Biden Justice Department that convicted Trump's allies that he let out of jail. It was his own Justice Department, Bill freaking Barr.
Yeah.
Come on. And they're going to just let this guy walk back in there. Nikki Haley's going to say some mildly, strong things to him. No, I'm sorry, Nikki Haley, you know better. Okay. You've been around guys like Trump your whole life. It's in your book. You need to start pushing back.
Going to be interesting to see how this plays out. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Chris Hansen, the syndicated radio host and host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcast, you'll find that. Also, check out his website, ChristopherHahn.com.
By the way, one thing I'll say about guys like Chris Christie, Nikki Haley, I don't like their politics, but if they lose an election, they're going to tip their hat and say congratulations. And that's what American politics used to be, right? We can't have a guy on running on a major party line who is going to say, I won no matter what.
Yeah.
And he's going to get some people to believe him. And let me tell you something. I think it's going to be worse next time. We're going to be prepared for it, but it's going to be worse.
No, we've normalized crybabies. And it was when we were kids, if you lost
whiny
a game.
Am I allowed to say the B word on this show?
I'd prefer you
whiny. Okay, I won't say it. And I don't like saying it because I do have one, and they are beautiful dogs. I don't like saying
Beautiful, yes, we'll go there. But this is one of those things where when we were kids, we're about the same age. You lost at something, you sucked it up, you shook someone's hand. I'll get you next time. Now it's just a bunch of kids throwing temper tantrums and lashing out. And speaking of temper tantrums,
by the way, the reason I made my kids play sports was to learn how to lose.
Yeah, no,
not
absolutely.
to learn how to win, to learn how to lose.
I'm with you on that. So I want to get to this before I let you go. I don't know if you've been noticing the cancel culture on the right. You remember all the whining and complaining? Because you said a moment ago you're afraid of getting canceled. That's because of all those lefties you're afraid of. But it's the right now canceling everybody. In fact, I got to get your thoughts on the canceling. I get going after Bud Light. I get going after Target. I get going after Walmart. I get that. I don't get going after Chick-fil-A.
They're going after Chick-fil-A now?
Yes, because they hired back in 2021 one of those DIE or DEI executives, and it's the end. They're canceled.
Here's what I have to say to my conservative friends out there. Maybe they should try to look up what capitalism is, right? And they should understand that corporations don't do things because they're in a good mood and they like people. They're not trying to be nice. They're not trying to advance a social agenda. They're trying to make money. And the reason why corporations are trying to appeal to the LGBTQ community is twofold. One, they would like their business too. But more importantly, the generation we all care about for our advertising dollars are the Gen Zs who really care about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Nobody cares what you and I want to buy. They think that we're set in our way. If you like a Ford, you buy a Ford. It is what it is at this point. You drink the same beer now you probably drank 20 years ago. And we're not trying new things, but Gen Z is, and they care about that, which is why Chick-fil-A and Walmart and Target and Bud Light and the NF freaking L have diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and will appeal to the LGBTQ community, to women, and to other people that these God-fearing capitalists don't want, because they don't understand capitalism.
Yep.
They're honestly what they are. They are socialists or worse.
I'm
they
going
are
fascist.
communists. Yeah, well, they're fascist. They're nationalist socialists, but I won't go there because it's
Now you're
show.
defining stuff. Now you're losing. What I'm waiting for now, since they've been going after Chick-fil-A, is when did they go after the Masterpiece Cake Shop, which started all this stuff? When did they go after the cake maker that started all of this?
I mean, it's so bizarre, right? They're going after Chick-fil-A. That was like. I remember the debates back in, I don't know, was it 2012 when people were boycotting Chick-fil-A because of their support of these conservative groups that were, anti-LGBTQ, and some of my gay friends had a real hard time boycotting Chick-fil-A, frankly, because they really liked it. But the fact that, that was like the conservative safe space,
right.
Chick-fil-A.
Exactly.
So for them to now say they're going to boycott that, I don't know, what are they going to do? Just cook at home? I guess they're going to just cook at home. I mean, but where are they going to get their chicken from? Because Purdue probably has diversity, equity, inclusion. Every corporation does. It is a ridiculous thing. And they're not, again, I want to stress this so that there could be no misconception. They are not doing it because they like diversity, equity, and inclusion. They are doing it because of their bottom line, because they are capitalists. And that's how capitalism works.
Yep. Well, to finish up with Rupert Murdoch. It's not about red or blue.
Oh, it's about green. And I will tell you this, for somebody who worked at Fox News, they have a diversity, equity, and inclusion program there. Okay?
No.
They do. Yeah. They have a chief diversity officer like every other big corporation in America. And they have, by the way, they had a recycling program. I mean, they had a whole thing, all sorts of things that viewers probably were like, what? Oh, and guess what? A lot of the people who work there are actors and liberals.
Yeah. No, I'm heading to the Talkers Conference here tomorrow and Friday.
Is it at Hofstra? You're going to Hofstra?
I'm going to Hofstra tomorrow, and
yeah, it's on Long Island where I am. I just unfortunately can't be there.
And it's one of those things where every time I go to these things, it's exactly what you said. It's not about the message or the ideology. It's about the sale.
It is.
It just is what it is. And when you pull back the veneer on a lot of these right-wing mouthpieces, it's not about red or blue. It really, truly, honestly is about green.
And by the way, all this outrage is artificially manufactured by people trying to make some money.
That's it.
They want some they want some clicks. It's disgusting. And, there's a special place in hell for them.
There you go. Good stuff. Chris, I appreciate the time, man. Always great stuff.
Anytime, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Our good friend Christopher Hahn. Check out the website, ChristopherHahn.com, the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. Find that. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at it. Can take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're working people of the talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1987. That was the day that Rose Will Monroe, one of the women who came to be known as Rosie the Riveter, died in Clarksville, Indiana. She was 77 years old. Rose had gone to work in a factory making B-52 bombers in Ypsilanti, Michigan during World War II. She was one of thousands of women in the United States who entered the industrial workforce to support the war effort, while more and more men entered the armed forces. While Rose Will Monroe worked at the factory, the image of Rosie the Riveter was already becoming perhaps one of the most iconic symbols of U.S. labor. The nickname Rosie the Riveter was first used in a song in 1942. The song was inspired by another real-life Rosie. Rosalind P. Walter worked during the war building Corsair fighter planes. Along with the song, a popular poster showed Rosie with a red kerchief tied around her hair, sleeves rolled up, arm muscles flexed, showing the strength of women workers. "We Can Do It" was emblazed across the top of the poster. Then, an actor by the name of Walter Pidgeon visited the Ypsilanti factory. He was helping to make a promotional film to support the war effort at home. When he found out there was a real Rosie who worked as a riveter in the plant, he recruited her for the film. The image of Rosie the Riveter lives on as a symbol of labor and women's empowerment.
All the day long, whether rain or shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie, the Riveter, keeps a sharp lookout for sabotage. Sitting up there on the fuselage, that little frail can do more than a man can do. Rosie, the Riveter.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Time on the riveting machine when they gave her a production.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
I gotta tell you, it's been really interesting watching the extreme right whine and complain about the woke and the cancel culture, only to go on a whiny, hissy fit rage fest. I mean, it really has been. Just to sit back and watch the hypocrisy and the idiocy and going after their own safe space at Chick-fil-A is just, look, it just shows that their rage is the point. It's not about, they don't care about diversity or equity or kids, or it's not about any of that. It's about tearing apart the country. It's about ripping things up. It's about breaking things. It's about like a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. These are attention seekers. These are chaos merchants. All they care about is getting seen, getting clicks and views. Because without the camera, without that thing going, "I see you," without that, there's nothing. It's not about protecting the children. It's not even about protecting their white privilege or anything like that. It's about getting attention and then getting more attention and more and more and more. Because, quite frankly, they're whiny children. And as I've said, without these cameras, without, "I'm going to get you, without these gotcha moments, no one cares about them. The thing that, Chris and I agree on as Gen Xers, you take care of bullies. When we were kids, you'd have done half this stuff in our neighborhoods. It wouldn't have happened. But understand, the outrage is the point. The issue doesn't matter. The issues never matter. It's about the rage and it's about the money. It really is. I have had numerous conversations over the years with folks who do right-wing outrage radio. I try not to be the outrage merchants. I try not to be in that world of, what you get here is you get my opinion, what I really believe. There's no sales behind what I say. Now, I do find it interesting, and I've gone to these conferences in the past, of which we're going to be taking a couple of days off to attend. And it really is. It's about the money. It's about the sale. It's about keeping people tuned in. It's about the issue. In fact, John Cooper, somebody I follow on Twitter, wrote a story about, when he met Sean Hannity. And it was, evidently he had done something as a county executive about passing some kind of a bill that it was going to make people's lives better or safer. And, Hannity just ran over him. And then afterwards said, hey, I love the bill. That was great. And it made him look like an idiot and was against it on air, but behind the scenes said, no, it's actually going to help save people's lives. It's probably a good thing. The on-air persona and the off-air completely different, because it's about keeping people riveted in their anger. It's about keeping people all riled up and bunched up in the panties and going after, the boogeyman. And it's always the other. You put whoever you want in that category, and that's who the right wing is going to point the outrage machine towards. It's outrageous, but it's about the money. Simple.
Tonight, most of the island is without power, and officials say they're only just beginning to survey the damage.
Super Typhoon Mawar slams into Guam. Global heating could expose billions to unlivable temperatures by 2100. Plus,
stop right now, no more oil and gas, stop fronting fossil fuels and end this madness.
Climate activists disrupt oil industry shareholder meetings.
In song. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
My friends across the aisle, the Grand Appliance Party is going to make sure your gas stove goes nowhere. The good news for you today is that if you have to shutter your business because the country defaults, your gas stove will still be there.
Oh, I feel much better. This is your Green News Report.
I look forward to the legislation of our time, the Appliance Bill of Rights.
Okay, Desi Doyen, it kind of spun up out of nowhere overnight, but a huge storm in Guam.
Yes, nearly the entire island of Guam is now without electricity after Super Typhoon Mawar rapidly intensified just before slamming into the U.S. Pacific Island territory as a powerful Category 4 storm on Wednesday. An unprecedented 9th Category 4 or 5 storm to hit a U.S. state or territory since 2017. Studies show that rapid intensification of storms is increasing in both frequency and magnitude, driven by rising ocean temperatures from human-caused climate change. A suite of new studies exposes the accelerating impacts and costs of burning fossil fuels. The first warns that ever higher temperatures generated by man-made global warming will render parts of the world uninhabitable outside of the geographic human climate niche, the temperature range in which civilization has flourished for millennia. If countries only meet their current climate targets, the world would be on track for 2.7 degrees Celsius of heating above pre-industrial temperatures in coming decades. That would expose about a third of humanity to unprecedented heat, forcing up to 1 billion people to migrate, in turn increasing conflicts over resources.
Sounds bad, but do I still get to keep my gas stove?
A second study estimates that a multi-day heat wave striking during a multi-day power outage in Phoenix, Arizona, would push nearly 800,000 people to seek emergency medical attention for heat stroke or other heat-related illnesses, overwhelming the city's hospital capacity. The researchers warn other cities face similar risks from overlapping blackouts and heat waves. Blackouts nationwide have more than doubled since 2015 as heat waves intensify because of man-made global warming. A new analysis by the World Meteorological Organization finds that since 1970, climate and water-related disasters have killed more than 2 million people and caused economic damages on the order of $4.3 trillion. More than a third of the economic damages from those disasters occurred in the United States, but nearly 90% of the deaths were in developing countries. The WMO says early warning systems have reduced the human toll of extreme disasters, but the trend of economic losses continues to rise.
Not a whole lot to snark about today.
No, unfortunately. And now a new groundbreaking analysis for the first time has quantified the economic burden that polluting companies have imposed on society. The report, called Time to Pay the Piper, finds that the world's top 21 fossil fuel emitting companies have caused more than $5 trillion in damages from decades of pollution and climate impacts. The study calculates that polluters owe at least $210 billion annually, or $23 trillion total, in climate reparations for current and future damages to come over the next few decades.
Yes, but think of all the profits they made.
Well, the oil industry certainly can't afford it. Highlighting the fossil fuel industry's record profits last year, climate protesters in the UK are disrupting big corporate shareholder meetings to increase pressure on the fossil fuel industry and its funders in the banking industry to stop causing catastrophic global warming.
Thank you.
At Shell Oil's annual meeting this week, CEO Sir Andrew Mackenzie, whose company pulled in a record $39 billion in profits last year alone, scolded the activists who delayed the meeting.
Earth is uninhabitable. Excuse me. I think We've heard your point. You've made it several times over.
Yeah, you've heard their thoughts several times over, and yet for decades you continue to... What's that, Sir Andrew? For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, Alabama.com, they tweeted out today, due to recent statements by the dumbest guy in the U.S. Senate promoting racial stereotypes, white nationalism, and other various controversial topics, I feel compelled to distance myself from his ignorant, hateful rants. That would be Charles Tuberville, the brother of the dumbest guy in the U.S. Senate, Tommy Tuberville. So he lost his brother. His brother is leaving him in the dust, distancing himself from the dumbest man in the Senate. This is, while simultaneously, the dumbest man in the Senate losing his top national security advisor because, well, the dumbest guy in the Senate is holding up a whole bunch of military nominations that military leaders are saying not making us safer, actually making us look weaker and potentially putting us at risk. And here to share some thoughts on this attack by the Tubervilles and the right on our military, I've asked our good friend Rich Ojeda to come talk with us. Rich is the national spokesman and founder of the Turn Left PAC, also hosts a nightly Facebook and YouTube live show. Rich, thanks for taking time to talk for us.
Man, I always enjoy being on your show, man.
So I got to get your thoughts. I'm looking at Tuberville, who I've affectionately called the dumbest man in the Senate. I look at someone like Ron DeSantis, who has said that the military is woke. That's his word. The military is woke. We're weaker than we've ever been. It's not the military that I was in. Thoughts?
Well, first off, I don't want to hear Ron DeSantis talk about the military that he was in, because that guy was the urinalysis coordinator. So that was his main topic that he was given when he was in the military. You know, I mean, it's a shame. I can't stand to see these people talk smack about the military. Our military is in fine shape. Our military, you know, for the most part, most people in the military, they don't play politics. You know, they do their job. Everybody has a job in the military, and that's what you're supposed to do. And when I see these people trying to attack the military, saying that the military is woke, first off, these are people that, you know, have never really picked up a rifle and manned a post. And if they did, they never done anything. I'll tell you right now, Ron DeSantis was a military lawyer. And, you know, Ron DeSantis did what many people do that go and get a law degree. They look at the military and say, hey, will you pay my college debt off? And I owe you 3 years in the military. And he was in the, you know, the reserves. And of course, he got to go to, he went to Iraq for a short period of time. And then he was also in Guantanamo Bay. But I mean, let me tell you something. That guy right there doesn't have enough time. He ain't never put his boots on enough spots to be able to talk anything about our military. And that's an absolute fact. But these people are just clueless.
I want to get your thoughts on his statement. He says, I see a lot of emphasis on political ideology, things like gender pronouns. He says, I see a lot of things about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And I think that's causing recruiting to plummet. He says, I think it's driven off a lot of warriors, and I think morale is low. There's a lot of I thinks there. Any reality?
No, I think that's absolute garbage. Our military is absolutely fine. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, just realize we've come off of 20 years of being at war. And, you know, there's no soldiers out there. Very rarely will you find a soldier right now that's only did one combat tour. For the most part, everybody's done 4, 5, 7. I mean, our troops have been going nonstop, and they've been doing their job. And to have somebody like, Ron DeSantis or anybody else say anything at all that's different actually a disservice to our men and women in uniform. In the military, you learn that it doesn't matter what that person to your left and right, doesn't matter what color their skin is, it doesn't matter who they pray to. The only thing that matters is that when it hits the fan, you can trust that person to be there by your side. And that's what's going on in our military, and it works well. I don't like when I see these people talk smack about our military. And Ron DeSantis has no business to open his pie hole and speak about our military. First and foremost, that guy right there, he's not a good person. And he has literally destroyed Florida. I mean, right now in Florida, the farmers are going under. Construction has come to a dead stop, and all he's doing is making that state worse. And people are leaving Florida. And if that's the way we want our country to be, if we want our country to be looking the same way as Florida, then make stupid mistakes and go down that path and put Ron DeSantis in power. Because let me tell you something, that guy right there is a hazard to our country. He's a hazard to our democracy.
Yeah, but I'm not just looking, it's not just DeSantis who's saying these things. There's a lot of Republicans who, in the past, the Republicans, whenever they saw a soldier, it was, hey, quick, photo op, get a flag and a soldier, we'll take a picture. Now you're seeing, look at Tommy Tuberville, holding up nominations. There's just so much of this stuff that I'm concerned that because of which hat you wear, we're making ourselves look weaker and projecting problems that aren't there just to score political points.
It's all political. They literally don't know anything other to do than to obstruct anything and everything that they can basically make it painful. That's what they do. Tommy Tuberville, has power to hold, these promotions back. But at the end of the day, he's just doing it because he wants to do it. I mean, to me, it's a shame. It's absolutely a disservice to our men and women in uniform when these people do the things that they do. And once again, they want to make everything political. Our military doesn't need to be political, and it doesn't. And it's a shame because that's what these people want to do.
No, it's scary stuff. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're with Richard Jetta, host of Ojetta Live, a nightly hit on Facebook and YouTube Live. You can check that out. 8 p.m., right?
Yeah, 8:30.
8:30 daily. You can check that out. Also, he's the founder and national spokesperson for the Turn Left PAC, turnleftpac.org, the website, if you want to take a look at that. I got to get your thoughts on the debt ceiling thing here. It passed overwhelmingly, and everyone knew it was going to. A lot of 71 Republicans voted against it. I was surprised it got to that number. I thought it would be like 40 or 50. Any thoughts on the deal?
Well, at the end of the day, I think that, when these things happen, a lot of people in this country doesn't understand how it works. But when something like this happens, a lot of people will come out and they will explain the importance and why things are the way that they are. And at the end of the day, this is the right thing to do. No matter who you are, you can be a Trump supporter all you want, but we need to understand that the debt ceiling was raised to pay the bills that were run up under Donald Trump. And, people need to know that. And of course, you're going to have some people that are going to, vote against it because at the end of the day, that's what they want to see chaos. They want us to absolutely go in default. They want veterans to go without health care. They want Social Security checks and to stop because in their mind, they're thinking if we make, everything really, really bad for the people, then maybe we can blame it on the Democrats and then they will elect us. But that's what the Republicans are doing.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is when you call these people out and people actually take the time to watch, they see that that's what they're doing. And at the end of the day, they kind of realize that, they may be cutting their own throat here. I'm glad that they come to that point and it was raised. And I think they had a deal where it's not going to even be in conversation for another 2 years. So, this was a big win. It was a big win for President Biden. I think that President Biden is doing a great job. I think that, he's already reduced the deficit by $1.4 trillion. I'm thinking let's give him another 4 years and let's see what else he can do.
Yeah, no, I do find it
terms
interesting
of
that
jobs,
Sleepy Joe whipped McCarthy, because look, McCarthy himself said, Social Security and Medicare were not even on the table, although they're going to set up a commission because they're going to go back after it. But I just find it interesting that that Sleepy Joe got the best of him.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think people just need to start. The thing that bothers me is I see people all the time that are just not paying attention. They don't know how things work, and it's like the poor Republican. You do realize that you're voting Republican, but the Republican Party doesn't care about you. The Republican Party is using you for your votes, but they're not going to do anything for you. When Donald Trump won the presidency, even though he tried to act like he was going to be down there with all the good old hardworking people, the first thing he did was give the largest tax cut break to the top, filthy richest people on the planet. And once again, that's what they do. That's what a Republican president does every time they win office. And, people need to start realizing this. I'm going to tell you, I'm looking forward to the next couple months because I think that hopefully Jack Smith is going to put a daggone fork in Donald Trump and say he's done.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. But, we can argue about that. I don't see Trump spending a day in jail. I think he'll be indicted. But I think he right now nomination for him is.
I'm going to tell you, Rick, I felt the same way. But I'm really starting to think, now that they've got video, they've got voice recordings of Donald Trump absolutely stating that he's got classified documents, even was talking. He wanted to show them to people. I mean, I think the classified document stuff is going to get him. I think that he's going to be charged and he's going to be found guilty of espionage. And remember, Jack Smith now is getting the recordings of the conversations that he had with Saudi Arabia, with Russia, with Turkey, with the United Arab Emirates. And I'm going to tell you, I think they're going to be able to prove that Donald Trump basically just used the presidency to try to pad his pockets.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I just don't think he spends a day in jail. But we'll see. But I got to get your thoughts on my congressman, Scott Perry. He said he was against the debt deal. In fact, he was angry at the, quote, swampy Republicans who were behind the deal. But his argument was he doesn't believe that we would have defaulted. He doesn't believe that anything bad would have happened. Said thought Janet Yellen was a liar. That none of reality is reality.
Well, then tell me something. Then how come he didn't raise a fuss when Donald Trump was in office and they raised the debt ceiling 3 times? I mean, that's the thing is he's absolutely clueless. And let me tell you something. He's not clueless. He knows exactly what would happen. He's just basically trying to say that to try to act like, that certain Republicans were wrong and that the Democrats were wrong. But at the end of the day, by allowing us to go in default would be horrific for our country. It would tank our currency. I mean, these are people that are supposed to be, elected to represent the people and are supposed to be doing what's best for America. And it's really sad when you see these people working together to literally try to destroy this country, all in the hopes that they will be the ones that will grab the rebound and then run with it.
No, it's frightening.
We deserve better.
Finally, I want to get your thoughts on, I'm sure you saw the story yesterday of Tara Reid, heading off to Russia. The tweet of the day coming from Matt Gaetz, who tweeted out several weeks ago, I guess it was, breaking weeks ago, MTG, train wreck green woman, and I had the opportunity to interview Tara Reid. I found her to be one of the most credible witnesses I have ever interviewed in the practice of law or during my time in Congress. Thoughts?
Honestly, I haven't been up on that.
You know who Tara Reid is, right?
It hit me.
Okay, Tara Reid was the one who accused Biden of sexual abuse in a hallway in the Senate while he was in the Senate. She was one of the people who was trying to sue him and try and take him to court and do all kinds of stuff. Nobody bought it. Not even the right wing bought it. Not even
so
the
she's
right
going
wing
to Russia?
outrage merchants bought it. But
So
now
she's going to Russia?
now she and Maria Butina evidently have they've gone over to Russia, and I can only assume that Putin's going to march her around as Biden's victim and as a propaganda arm. I just thought you might have a thought.
Well, I mean, in terms of anything with Russia, I think that it's almost over. I think that it amazes me that Vladimir Putin is still in power. They are now getting ready to break the 210,000 KIA's soldiers. Right now, Ukraine is absolutely starting the spring offensive, and right now they're talking about countries that border Russia that are now looking at other lands in Russia as if they may want to go and take that land back. I mean, I think Russia is upside down, and if anybody goes over to Russia, Vladimir Putin will use it in a way to try to make himself look good. And at the end of the day, the way I look at it, if they're over there with Vladimir Putin, who the entire world begged, please do not invade the sovereign nation of Ukraine. If they're over there right now working with Putin and allowing him to paint a picture for them that they think they're going to bring back here to the United States and use it to try to hurt our country, to try to hurt Biden, let me tell you something. I look at that as treason as far as I'm concerned, and they should be treated accordingly.
I'm right there with you. Look, being of the age that I am, growing up at the end of the Cold War, I cannot believe there are people who are siding with Putin in this country right now. It's outside of my ability to understand.
But see, that's how the Republicans use the poorly educated, because it's the poorly educated that run with this garbage. I was talking to a guy that I served in the military with the other night, and for 2 solid hours on my back porch, I was literally telling him, dude, you've got to get your head out of your fourth point of contact and start doing some daggone research. Because once again, that's what his thought was Biden's doing the wrong. I mean, really, take 5 minutes and read something, anything. I don't care. Amazing.
There you go. Rich, as always, entertaining. I appreciate the time. Great stuff. Hope folks will check out Ojeda Live, 8:30 weeknights on Facebook and YouTube Live. Also, check out the turnleftpack.org website, where Rich is the national founder and national spokesperson of Turn Left Pack. Rich, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time.
Hey, anytime, brother. Just let me know.
Our good friend Rich Ojeda. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Mark Wayne Mullen, Oklahoma Senator. I love the fact that Mark Wayne hits on these important points. He tweeted out today, if you take out a loan, you pay it back. A student loan is no different from a house or a car loan. Taxpayers shouldn't be forced to foot the bill. Student debt transfer is reckless and unfair to 87% of Americans who never took out loans or responsibly paid them back. You know where this is going, right? Mark Wayne, pandemic, PPP loan, didn't pay it back. This is one of those things where you just go, the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is strong with this one. And we're talking a lot it's the same thing with Marjorie, three names. Same thing. They got these PPP loans, don't have to pay them back. But, those people who they took out college loans because they were told it's the only way you're going to get into the middle class. It's the only way you're going to be able to, I don't know, have a decent life. And look, going to college still is a reasonable proposition. You still make more money over the lifetime, even if you are saddled with a bunch of student loan debt. But as a country, we should do better. And look, my generation was really the first to get screwed in this. My parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, when they got back from World War II, the GI Bill covered a lot of it. College for people who are a little bit older than me, you could get by working a part-time job and still have a crummy apartment, a jalopy of a car. You could get through. Try that today. And we're at a time now where education is more important than ever. And as I said yesterday on the show, I think we should be looking at not just K through 12, but K through 14. We should be looking at VOTEC training for 2 years, community college, some kind of training, some kind of apprenticeship, some kind of additional education that's funded to where you don't have to bet the farm or skin in the game, as our Republican friends love to say. That it's an investment in the country's future. Not who's willing to go deepest in debt, not who's willing to take out massive loans. And you look at the money that's being made off of this by the private sector. This is the part that gets me. And as I said from the beginning in all this, there are ways to do this that are fair for everyone. There are ways that are equitable, that are reasonable. I'm a believer if you took out $10,000 in student loan money, you pay $10,000 back. I think the federal government could buy up the loans and administer them for a very low fee and have people pay them back over a period of time. But what's interesting is people that I know who have had student debt for years have gotten jobs, lost jobs, back and forth, missed payments. And by the time you figure it out, the amount of money that they've racked up in fees and interest and late payments and breaks in payments and all of this stuff has run up their debt. The one person, was telling me they graduated, I think they graduated like 10 years ago. And they paid for, intermittently because they kept getting jobs, losing jobs back and forth. And after 10 years of making payments, they had paid nothing on their principal. They were right where they started from because the interest rates were high, the penalties were high, and you go, you're never getting out from under it. So for me, the reasonable thing to do in this moment, okay, we buy up all the student loans, we charge a 1%, 2%, whatever it costs to administer, and you pay back what you borrowed. That's fair. We take the profit motive out of this. If it's an investment in the country's future, this is the way forward. This way you don't get people who are whining, go, well, my generation didn't get this. And people who are complaining that, hey, I didn't go to college because I didn't want to take on the debt. Fair enough. This seems to be a rational way forward. That's why we're not going to do it. That's why the Mark Waynes of the Wayne Mullins of the world are like, screw those people. I got mine. The heck with them. Yep. That's our GOP. Right back after this. I'm Rick Smith. And this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1987. That was the day that Rose Will Monroe, one of the women who came to be known as Rosie the Riveter, died in Clarksville, Indiana. She was 77 years old. Rose had gone to work in a factory making B-52 bombers in Ypsilanti, Michigan during World War II. She was one of thousands of women in the United States who entered the industrial workforce to support the war effort, while more and more men entered the armed forces. While Rose Will Monroe worked at the factory, the image of Rosie the Riveter was already becoming perhaps one of the most iconic symbols of U.S. labor. The nickname Rosie the Riveter was first used in a song in 1942. The song was inspired by another real-life Rosie. Rosalind P. Walter worked during the war building Corsair fighter planes. Along with the song, a popular poster showed Rosie with a red kerchief tied around her hair, sleeves rolled up, arm muscles flexed, showing the strength of women workers. "We Can Do It" was emblazed across the top of the poster. Then, an actor by the name of Walter Pidgeon visited the Ypsilanti factory. He was helping to make a promotional film to support the war effort at home. When he found out there was a real Rosie who worked as a riveter in the plant, he recruited her for the film. The image of Rosie the Riveter lives on as a symbol of labor and women's empowerment.
All the day long, whether rain or shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie, the riveter, keeps a sharp lookout for sabotage. Sitting up there on the fuselage, that little frail can do more than a male can do. Rosie, the riveter.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Time on the riveting machine when they gave her a production.
Do mass protests matter anymore? Even when large numbers turn out with a high level of outrage directed at abusive corporate or governmental elites, the powers that be usually just hunker down and wait for the fury to pass. But the one form of protest that actually gets to even the most aloof elite is cultural caricature. In recent decades, the creative deployment of giant puppets, satirical songs, pop-up parodies, and other forms of social mockery has pierced the ego shields of haughty corporate chieftains and puffed-up politicos. They ignore angry speeches, but public ridicule stings them personally, energizing the larger community. Consider how common household utensils can rally the people's discontent, rattle the establishment, and deliver a message of revolutionary protest. In recent years, mass rebellions, armed with nothing but kitchenware, have noisily made their points in such disparate places as Chile and Iceland. And today, the people of France are bedeviling their country's aristocratic wannabe, President Emmanuel Macron, with a ceaseless mass clanging of skillets, saucepans, spoons, and other plebeian cookware brought from their French kitchens into the streets of every region. They are protesting the president's imperious decision to undercut their pensions, as well as his tone-deaf refusal even to hear their complaints. So their voice has become the incessant banging of pots. Now, Macron can't go anywhere without being greeted and often drowned out by the cacophony of casserolade, the saucepan movement. The protest is driving Macron crazy, which seems to be a very short ride for him. Clearly irritated by the commoner's cleverness, his government is now using anti-terrorism laws to ban, quote, the use of portable sound devices in protests. This is Jim Hightower saying the crazier he gets about pots and pans, the louder people laugh at their leader.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Got an email from Betty. She says, Rick, I hate the fact that the GOP got anything. It is outrageous that they can hold us hostage whenever they want. This should be something we remember in 2024. Look, I agree, Betty. Honestly, this is something that I'm hoping working people will remember. Look, this agreement, and this is where my mind is. My agreement is this is necessary. I don't want to see the economy tank. A recession is horrible for Democrats in 2024. It's horrible for working people because of the job losses and all of the things that come with recession. Not great. But I'm hoping in this moment that whichever side of the whichever hat you wear, the red hat or the blue hat, the reality is that they were targeting the hard hats. They were targeting working people. And I'm hoping that working people wake up to the reality that they were nothing but bargaining chips for Republicans in this whole debacle. That they were willing to throw working people under the bus. They were willing to throw you and me under the bus to feed their political aims. And look how quickly they were willing to do it. You got all these anti-worker politicians who are just, we don't care about you or your family or your community. We care about our extremist ideology. We're going to feed the very wealthy. Because you didn't hear them talking about cutting things to the very well-to-do, did you? No. We're going to cut food programs from the poorest of the poor. We're going to kick Granny off of, we're going to go after her and her Social Security check. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. And no matter where you are in the working class scale, whether you're at the top of it and you've got a couple of checks in the bank and you're able to weather a couple of month storm, or you're like most people living paycheck to paycheck, they were willing to throw all of us under the bus to get their ideological position pushed through, which is more for the very well-to-do and the powerful and less for working people. It comes down to something that simple. And look, this will be an issue in 2024. It most certainly will be. Because honestly, they didn't get much. I mean, this is the thing. They got something, and it's going to hurt some people. There are people who are going to suffer from this. Now I get attacked. Well, you want to give no, I don't want to give out everything, but I do believe that you have to have a safety net that helps the least among us. Growing up in the Catholic Church in the 70s and 80s, it was one of those. They were still on the peace and social justice kick. They were still talking about love thy neighbor as thyself. They were still reaching hands out into poor communities. Their priests were still walking picket lines with striking workers. That was still going on. Now the Catholic Church made this really rightward shift, and it's all about the abortion issue, which will be a 2024 issue as well, without question. And I look at another one of these stories. There's a woman in Tennessee. Evidently, she had started taking contraception, then found out she was pregnant, and there's a whole story going back and forth. And, they were excited they were going to have another child. This is great. And what ended up happening is this woman ended up having what they're calling a life-saving emergency hysterectomy, which basically ended her chance of ever having children again. Because, as she put it, she was denied a medically necessary abortion care in Tennessee. And, she said, my doctor told me I needed to do the surgery. If I didn't do it, I could die, and the baby could die, and all this. And she's put into all these horrible situations. They take the baby C-section. They end up, hysterectomy, all kinds of stuff. And what this woman's talking about is her life was like torture. And again, this is because these laws are put into place that really do put doctors in a defensive situation. And they're not going to risk their lives and their licenses and this stuff for some woman who, this is where you go, bad policy puts people in bad positions. If this woman had been able to get the care that she needed at the beginning, they wouldn't have ripped her insides apart. They wouldn't have performed a really, and I don't know a lot about this, but I got to imagine a pretty radical surgery for a 30-something woman, a 32-year-old woman. This is where I keep coming back to. Policymakers who have an ideological, theocratic agenda should not be making policies for people across the political spectrum. Said before, I'm not in favor of abortion, personally, but they should be safe and legal. And they should be the option for a woman and her doctor to pursue. Not some angry old white guy who's well past his ability, who has some God complex. And the weird thing is you look at a lot of these states that are passing these laws. It's getting worse for women in those states because those doctors who do this stuff are leaving. South Carolina, we talked about the other day, where I think in 14 counties there are zero doctors who specialize in OBGYN. And in 5 others, I think there was 1 doctor in each county. So in 19 counties in the state, you've got 5 doctors. Sorry, there are more people, more women giving babies, having babies, more women pregnant in there than that. And that's kind of what this is about. It's about the chaos. As I said before, the chaos is the point. The inhumanity is the point. The cruelty is the point. Now, the right will say, well, this was a success. It's a wild success. Because, well, the baby was delivered by cesarean. The mother lived. Success. Except that this woman was basically ripped apart. But that doesn't matter in conservative world. And this for me is the weird spot that we're in. They didn't have that choice. And the thing is I don't want to talk about these stories. This isn't my world. But this is where we're heading. These are the people who are being affected now. This is where the fire is now. This is where the harm and the damage is happening now. What happened to our conservative friends who used to believe in less intrusive, limited government? What happened to personal liberty? What happened to mind your business? And I come back to, as I started off earlier, the reality is it's not about making a better society. Because look, if it really were truly about we care about the children, if it really were about the best community possible, there'd be policies doing this. They wouldn't be seeking to cut and gut food stamp programs. They wouldn't be going after and slashing and burning Medicaid programs, which understand in this country, Medicaid pays for I think over half of all children born. If you were truly pro-child, if you were truly pro-life, prenatal care would be front and foremost. There would be some Christian conservative out there going, hey, you know what? We need to make sure that these babies get the best care that they can get so we can bring them in the world and make them healthy citizens and educate them and make them good, productive parts of society. That's not what they're saying at all. Not even a little bit. And this debt ceiling fight is part of that. We're going to force you to have children that you can't afford, you don't want, and you're not capable of caring for, but we're not going to help you along the way. Not going to help you get the skills, not going to help you get the care, not going to help you get the education, not just for yourself, but for your kids, or the health care, or any of that. Not going to do any of that. You're on your own. Once the kid pops out, that's you. It's all on you. Please, someone tell me, where in this country are Republicans leading a charge to make sure that the children that we're forcing being born are going to get the care, the health care, the education, the food, the housing? Where are we going to make sure that happens? Where is that bill? Where is that conservative Christian who's out there, pounding that book that they love so much? Where is it? Where are they at? Because I would love to talk to the sponsor of that bill. Because I would sign on to it. Here's the thing. I grew up at a time in my neighborhood, cupboards were empty. People were desperate. I don't want any kid to have to grow up like that. I don't want any kid to have to go without. I don't want any parent to have to look in their child's eyes and know that there's no way they can feed them because there's no help there. There's no job available. I'm not against work requirements if there's work available. And I get idiots going, well, there's job openings. We know there are reports already that a lot of these companies put jobs out for bid, that there are no jobs just so they look better. So they look better for the shareholders going, hey, we got all these job openings. We're growing. And they never seem to hire anybody. Pardon my frustration, but we can and should and must do better. And if you're not going to be part of the solution, if you're going to continue to be like, well, the extreme right in this country, we got to move on without you. And please, the sane, the rational, the silent majority who's absorbing this stuff and shaking their heads and going, I can't believe we're going through this again. You got to act. You got to join together with others. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1889. Nestled in western Pennsylvania was the community known as Johnstown. The town and surrounding area was home to 23,000 people, families of workers who labored in the region's booming steel mills. Those who lived in the town had to deal with the soot that fell on their homes from the billowing smokestacks of the mills. But just 15 miles above Johnstown, there stood a very different place: the South Fork Hunting and Fishing Club. This was an exclusive area of summer homes for some of the leading industrialists of the day, including Andrew Carnegie, Andrew Mellon, and Henry Clay Frick. The club's members enjoyed fishing and recreating on the 500-acre man-made Lake Conemaugh, the 72-foot-high, 930-foot-wide dam which created the lake was made of earth and in poor repair. Drainage pipes that were supposed to regulate the lake had been removed, sold for scrap, and were not replaced. Despite repeated warnings of the dam's problems, repairs were not made. And so, on a rainy day in May, the lake swelled. Recognizing the dam was in trouble, workers were scrambled to attempt to fortify the dam. But the efforts came too late. The dam failed catastrophically, hurling 20 million tons of water into the valley below. The wall of water reached 40 feet high and half a mile wide, and carried the force of Niagara Falls. 2,209 people died in the flood, including 99 whole families. One body was recovered as far away as Cincinnati, Ohio. 1,600 homes were destroyed, and there was $17 million in damages. The site became the first peacetime effort for Red Cross relief, led by Clara Barton. Not surprisingly, the South Fork Club was never held legally responsible. The courts ruled the flood an act of God. Back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So, a little bit of, let's play a little game. It's called, what does fascism look like? Shall we? Let's go to my former state of Ohio, where the Republican legislature there, and by massive numbers, Republican. I mean, there's no Democratic presence whatsoever that matters. Republicans have veto power, I think, in both chambers. And also they have the governor's office. So you're whatever Republican wet dream is being had that day is, well, theirs. And I point to this article that grabbed my attention, that evidently starting on June 1st, the big utility company there, AEP, they are going to see their rates go up a little bit. The American Electric Power Company, they petitioned for a rate increase, and basically they got a 28% increase. They're saying that the average bill for electricity will jump per consumer from $155 to $198 a month, And hey, thanks so much for the profit. Now the company's saying, well, we're not going to make anything off. This is not for profit for us. No, of course not. It's not for us. This is for generating supply. This just goes right back into the business. This is just about business. We haven't taken but massive increases over the last several years as well. But this is where you go, what are the numbers? Now, the weird thing is I grew up in Cleveland, and one of the things that I love about Dennis Kucinich is there's a tie-in here. When I was a kid, back in the 70s, Kucinich got thrown out of the city of Cleveland as mayor because he refused to sell what at the time was called Muni Light. It was a publicly owned electric company. The idea was that it was like a cooperative. The community owned it, served as for power for the community. It wasn't huge, but at the time, the illuminating company, which was the big for-profit company, they wanted to buy it up because the city was in a little bit of debt. And I think if I remember the numbers, like the city was like in $15 million worth of debt at the time, which was a considerable sum of money, not insurmountable, but a considerable sum. And Kucinich was like, no, I'm not selling this. I'm not selling this asset. We have to do something else, restructure our debt, do whatever, but we're not selling the asset. We're not privatizing this. We're not doing it. And later on, just to make the history really, really short, several years down the road, the city was like, oh my God, that was such a smart thing to do to save us from the vultures that run the power companies and the utilities from gouging us to death. So when I started looking at the rate increases, I'm going, well, what are we talking about apples to apples? So I went and I looked at American Electric Power's AEP's proposed rates because Ohio, like Pennsylvania, has choice, which they're all within the same spot. There's no real choice. It's the illusion of choice. Makes you believe you got choice. Ooh, I picked my power company. There's a different name gouging me this month. So I went and I checked the rates, and as of June 1st, 2023, the rate will be increased to it's 0.1184478 cents per kilowatt hour. It's almost 12 cents a kilowatt hour. So I went over to what is now Cleveland Public Power, which was the Muni Light of the past. It is the publicly held utility that services a good portion of the greater Cleveland area, not the entire part, just a certain section. And I went and I checked their rates. Their rates for the first 1,000 kilowatt hours in the summertime was 0.077, so almost 8 cents, which was right where this AEP had been. In the winter, it's 0.065, so almost 7 cents for the first 1,000 kilowatt hours. For over that, in the summer, it was 0.075, and in the wintertime, 0.0353. So you're looking at the rate increase for AEP is almost 12 cents a kilowatt hour. The publicly held, not profit, is about 7.5 to 3.5 in the wintertime. Stop and think about how much money goes to the entity itself, how much profit is being sucked out of this. And I know my friends, well, that publicly owned utility stuff, that's socialism. Okay. Granted, having the public, having the community own the factors of production, yep, classic definition of socialism. Yep, the people owning their utility, I'll grant you that. But the capitalists who are supposed to do things much more efficiently, now remember, we're sold on this idea that they know what they're doing, they're efficient, they're productive, and competitive. Remember, competitive. Almost 3 times the rate in the wintertime that the good capitalists are gouging? Close to twice as much? as the good capitalists are gouging. And this is where I have a problem with. Now, look, I agree with competition. But these models that were set up, this deregulation that happened back in the 90s, it happened here in Pennsylvania. I remember the year, it was 96. They were running ads on the radio. God was calling down to Pennsylvania consumers saying, you have choice. When you went to heaven, you saw St. Peter. You'd say, where do I got to go? St. Peter would go, what do you think you are, in Pennsylvania? You don't get choice. I mean, they sold it to us like this great thing. It was amazing. It was going to be utopia. And what are they doing? They're gouging us. And this is my problem, again, with one, having monopolies, and two, having a political monopoly like they have in Ohio. They have jerry-rigged the entire state. They have broken their own rules and their own laws, and there's no one to hold them accountable. And they are using that political power to enrich the handful at the expense of everybody else in the state. And this should be one of those things that makes people outraged. You want the Tea Party people and the MAGA hats and all those the red hat folks to lose their mind. This should be something you lose your mind over. This should be something you're angry about. You're literally being robbed blind. But will there be anger on the right? No. Will any of these people lose their seats for voting for this? No. Because these power companies, they have sufficiently greased the palms of the politician class. And the people feel helpless. And this is where I come back to the power of that vote. The power of the ballot box. To hold these people accountable. Take off the red hats. Take off the blue hats. Get back to the roots. It's time to build. It's time to move forward. Finally, a couple of headlines caught my attention. Motherboard had Vice, their motherboard section, had two interesting competing headlines a couple of days apart. The first one was eating disorder. Helpline fires staff. Transition to chatbot after unionization effort. Evidently, the chatbot named Tessa is going to replace the entire helpline program starting on June 1st. This was what was supposed to happen. And then immediately after this, the headline reads, Eating Disorder Helpline disables chatbot for harmful responses after firing human staff. Evidently, every single thing that Tessa suggested were the things that led to people's eating disorders. I guess it just wanted business. Maybe it felt lonely. And this is one of those things where the argument they were making is, don't worry so much about AI just yet, because it's glitchy. Worry about AI. There's real problems on the horizon. Will it make some things better? Yes. Will it make some things worse? Absolutely. Will it displace workers? Oh my goodness, yes. But at some point, some of the predictions that are being made, scary, scary stuff. But I do want to hear your thoughts, questions, comments, whatever's on your mind. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We're going to be taking several days off for this week for the Talkers Conference. Next week on vacation for our big revamp of our studios. We're going to play some of the best ofs from our Working Class Heroes tour. Hope you enjoy it. We'll see you back here next time. Thanks so much for being here.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.